I'm Coffee Kevin. What is the best water to brew coffee? Well, I just made a French press using ultra-fresh, in-season coffee beans, fresh roasted and ground moments before this broadcast. I used 40 grounds coarse ground coffee to 600 grams of water. Hold on. I just have to do this. It's in my contract. Oh, delicious. What kind of water? Oh, yeah. That is a really good question. You probably know that 98% of the strongest cup of coffee is good old H2O. The coffee industry recognized the challenge mostly for its commercial customers such as restaurants and cafes. Standards were set years ago regarding water hardness. The home coffee enthusiast has less to worry about than food service customers. The amount of brewing you and I are likely to do, and this includes me too, yes, at home, means our equipment won't line up fast enough to make you invest or me invest in the type of water equipment a cafe is likely to need. Espresso is the most dependent upon soft water. Many cafes must soften their water for espresso equipment to work properly. I'm going to keep this segment focused on the 80% plus of U.S. consumers brewing using filter, drip, siphon, press methods at home. Let's take a look at home water options. I hope to make you understand the choices and help you make the right one. Water has two distinct roles in coffee. It acts as a solvent to extract flavor oils from ground coffee, and then it stays on to its second and equally important role as a vital accompanist to stay in the background of the coffee oils in your cup and that balance. Let's start comparing waters. Most likely you're using tap water, and if you're lucky enough to have water that meets health standards, you likely use this water for just about everything. Will it make good coffee? I once visited a big coffee maker manufacturer, and in their conference room they had hanging two charts. One showed regional water hardness across the U.S. The other showed coffee consumption across the U.S. To me, it was a coffee Rorschach test. I immediately noticed the two charts were virtually identical, almost waking up their marketing department. Look at how similar. What it tells us is that people living where water is soft consume more coffee, while hard water means lower consumption. There may be other factors, but I'm comfortable citing this comparison to urge you to look at your water hardness first if you're unhappy with your coffee. Let me explain the terms hard and soft. Simply, hard water means lots of minerals. Soft water means fewer. Distilled water means no minerals. Most coffee experts say soft water is better, but distilled is too much. A tiny amount of minerals actually adds necessary flavor. Another less popular but still very much alive water source are private wells. When I started making coffee, I used water from an outdoor pump. In fact, for a while, I credited this water with the great taste I was getting. Once I learned to do a little water analysis, I discovered this water had a lot of iron and calcium in it, off the charts hard, which likely added taste of its own and prevented ideal extraction. You might be lucky, but I've since found private wells are unlikely to have the best water for making coffee. My first house had a private well, and although we filtered it, it was both costly and still had a metallic taste. And if you have sulfur, that's a whole other problem. It's not good for coffee, that's for sure. Speaking of wells, private and municipal, I know some of us have salt-softened water. It gives up minerals and generally has at least some sodium in its place. Not enough to be unhealthy, according to water softener salespeople, perhaps, but enough to both deaden the taste of coffee and, in some cases, to physically affect the coffee brewing contact times. Sometimes you can see this gelatinous mass in a drip brewer, and several minutes after you think it should be done, Bottled water is probably the most consistent and easiest to deliver good quality water for coffee brewing. This is because most of what it takes to bottled water to their industry standards happens to also make it good for brewing. Bottled water, whether it's from underground wells, lakes, or rivers, is likely distilled during the bottling process. Then a small amount of minerals is added for taste. I'm going to make this simple. Almost any bottled water labeled spring or drinking water will make good coffee. You may decide you have a favorite, but I'm just going to say once water is distilled, meaning stripped of its minerals and environmental, natural, and man-made toxins, it's all pretty much even coffee-wise. From there, all waters other than those labeled distilled have added minerals to make it taste good. And generally, if it tastes good to drink by itself, it will taste good in brewed coffee. If you read coffee industry literature on the subject, it's helpful, but there are problems that matter to them more than you and me. For instance, they recommend 100 TDS water as a coffee brewing specification. TDS means total dissolved solids, and it's measured in parts per million. I think the coffee industry spec is too narrow and makes it difficult for consumers to find and verify. Most popular bottled drinking waters measure around 10 TDS. Most spring waters range much wider, often up to around 200 TDS. Either way, I get fine results when I've been caught somewhere and just need to grab a bottle for brewing. For those well-heeled, jaded enthusiasts, there is a product called Third Wave water that purports to be formulated to add just the right mineral balance for idealized coffee brewing. Comes in a little packet like this, and you take a gallon of water and just rip this top off and pour it in there and shake the bottle up. The directions tell you to add this powder to distilled water. I can only say I've not been amazed at its qualities, but I'm sure it has its fans. Note that it contains, magnesium, calcium, and sodium. Sodium is a known flavor-reducing agent. I've reached out several times in hopes of interviewing the owner. Maybe my lukewarm mention will spur them to contact me. It's an interesting product. If you have what is otherwise good-tasting municipal water, you can always obtain a TDS meter and test your water's TDS. It's the quickest way to check to see if your water has too many minerals or not. Let me show you. This is a TDS meter. I think I got this free from Zero Water at a trade show. Now here's my town's municipal water sourced from deep wells. There we go. Well, anyway. And then filtered to remove the majority of iron. Am I reading that? 279. Wow. I considered filtering it through a Brita, but Brita themselves told me their filter would simply get quickly clogged after a few uses, as indeed it did. I did try it. And here's a bottle of Wisconsin-sourced natural artesian well water. I think it says on its label somewhere that it's been filtered. 155 TDS. What I'd expect. And then here's a bottle of Poland spring water, which is sourced in Maine. My experience in both the Pacific Northwest and the Northeast is they have pretty low mineral water. And indeed, the TDS of this water measures a low 43. I use almost any bottled water without concern. I don't use alkaline waters, distilled, highly mineralized waters, or any other specialized water due to concerns that these will add their own taste. Again, we're talking filter method, pour-overs, French press, AeroPress, automatic drip, mocha, and other so-called filter method coffees. Not espresso. Most espresso enthusiasts happily use distilled or softened water without issue. If I haven't utterly confused you, this is at least my attempted simple consumer's guide to coffee brewing water. If you like my content, tell me so. Please also subscribe, follow, share my posts with like-minded friends. Many thanks to my sponsor, Java Master, whose small footprint in-store roaster has the potential to put fresh roasted beans right under your nose at the grocery store. You need to ask your local grocer, who almost certainly knows nothing about coffee, much less fresh roasted coffee and its benefits to our taste buds. I'm Coffee Kevin.